Dean Ambrose is back and he's out for blood. After 5 years away from WWE, the Lunatic Fringe just made the most shocking return in wrestling history, and his target isn't who you think it is. Everyone expected if Dean ever came back, he'd go after old rivals or chase championships. But no. Dean Ambrose walked into that arena tonight with one mission: destroy Seth Rollins and expose Paul Heyman for the manipulator he truly is. And the way he announced his intentions, the words he used, and the violence he promised are going to shake WWE to its absolute core. If you think you know what happened, you don't, because the story behind this return is so much deeper and more personal than anyone could have imagined. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you're going to understand why this isn't just a return, it's a reckoning. Let me set the stage for you because this return didn't just happen randomly. For the past 8 weeks, Paul Heyman has been running Raw with his coalition of Drew McIntyre, Karrion Kross, Austin Theory, Bronson Reed, and Solo Sikoa. They've been attacking wrestlers, interfering in matches, and basically holding the entire roster hostage. Every week, someone new gets destroyed by Heyman's group, and tonight it was supposed to be Seth Rollins' turn to fall. Seth has been the last major star standing against Heyman's takeover. He's been cutting promos about how he won't let Raw become Heyman's playground. He's been fighting members of the coalition in singles matches and winning. He's been the lone wolf standing up for what's right while everyone else either joins Heyman or runs scared. Tonight was supposed to be Seth's final stand, a gauntlet match against 3 members of Heyman's coalition with the stipulation that if Seth loses, he has to leave Raw. The match started and Seth was on fire. He beat Austin Theory in 12 minutes with a stomp. The crowd was going crazy. Seth barely had time to recover before Karrion Kross came out, and Seth battled him for another 15 minutes before hitting a second stomp for the victory. The place was electric. Seth was down to one more opponent, and everyone thought it was going to be Drew McIntyre, the biggest challenge saved for last. But Paul Heyman walked out instead of Drew. He got on the microphone and said, Seth, you've been so impressive tonight, beating 2 of my best warriors. But I have to admit something, I've been testing you. I wanted to see if you still had that fire, that passion, that drive that made you architect of the Shield. And you've proven that you do. The crowd was confused. Where was this going? Heyman continued, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a choice. You can face your third opponent and probably win, and then continue this exhausting fight against my coalition week after week. Or, you can accept my offer to join US. Think about it, Seth. We were family once. We conquered WWE together. You, Roman, and Dean under my guidance. We can do it again. What do you say? Seth grabbed a microphone and the crowd was chanting no, because they didn't want to see Seth turn. Seth looked at Heyman and said, Paul, I learned a long time ago that everything you touch turns to poison. You manipulated me when I was young and stupid. You turned me against my brothers. You're the reason the Shield fell apart. So here's my answer, bring out my third opponent so I can finish this. The crowd erupted. But Heyman just smiled that knowing smile. He said, Seth, you're making a mistake. But if that's your choice, then allow me to introduce your third and final opponent. Someone who knows you very well. Someone who has unfinished business with you. Someone who, like you, has reason to hate me but is smart enough to know that I can give him exactly what he wants. The lights went out. The arena was pitch black. And then, music hit that nobody had heard in WWE in 5 years. It was a new theme but with a familiar sound. The crowd started buzzing, confused, excited, nervous. When the lights came back up, there was a figure standing at the top of the ramp in a hoodie with the hood covering his face. He started walking slowly toward the ring, and with each step, the crowd's volume increased. The figure got to the ring, stepped through the ropes, and stood face to face with Seth Rollins. Seth looked like he'd seen a ghost. His hands were shaking, the color drained from his face. And then the figure slowly pulled back his hood and revealed his identity. Dean Ambrose. Jon Moxley. The Lunatic Fringe himself. The entire arena exploded. People were screaming. The pop was so loud it probably registered on seismographs. But here's the shocking part. Dean wasn't smiling. He wasn't doing his lunatic antics. He was stone-faced, staring at Seth with an intensity we've never seen from him before. And Paul Heyman was standing at ringside with the biggest smile on his face. Seth was frozen in the ring, unable to process what was happening. His best friend, his brother, was standing in front of him as the third member of his gauntlet match. Dean grabbed a microphone and the crowd went silent waiting to hear what he had to say. Seth, it's been a long time. His voice was different, darker, more serious. 5 years since I left this place. 5 years since I walked away from WWE because I was tired of the politics, tired of the manipulation, tired of watching people I cared about get used and discarded. Seth tried to speak but Dean held up his hand. I spent 5 years building a career somewhere else, becoming the man I always knew I could be. But you know what I learned, Seth? I learned that no matter where I went, no matter what I accomplished, there was unfinished business here. And that business is with you and with him. Dean pointed at Paul Heyman. You two represent everything that went wrong in my WWE career. Seth, you betrayed me. You stabbed me and Roman in the back because Heyman got in your head and convinced you that you were better than us. The crowd was hanging on every word. Seth tried to respond. Dean, that was 10 years ago. We moved past that. We forgave each other. We reunited. But Dean cut him off. We put a band-aid on a bullet wound, Seth. We pretended everything was okay because that's what WWE wanted. But I never forgot. I never truly forgave. And I spent 5 years thinking about what I would do if I ever came back here. Dean started pacing, his intensity building. And then Paul Heyman reached out to me. The same Paul Heyman who manipulated you into destroying the Shield. The same Paul Heyman who's manipulated everyone he's ever worked with. He called me and said, Dean, I can give you what you want. I can give you Seth Rollins on a silver platter. And you know what? I listened. Seth was shaking his head. Dean, no. Don't do this. Heyman is using you just like he used me. He's playing us against each other. Can't you see that? But Dean just laughed. Oh, I see exactly what he's doing, Seth. And I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I get what I want. I get to finally settle the score with you. And then I'm coming for Paul. Dean turned to Heyman at ringside. You hear that, Paul? You think you're so smart. You think you've manipulated me into doing your dirty work. But I'm not Drew McIntyre. I'm not some loyal soldier who's going to follow your orders. I'm using you just like you're using me. You wanted Seth destroyed? I'll destroy him. But then I'm coming for you. And unlike everyone else you've manipulated over the years, I'm going to expose you for the snake you really are. Heyman's smile faded. He looked genuinely concerned for the first time. Dean turned back to Seth. So here's how this is going to work. Seth, you and me, we're going to have the fight we should have had 10 years ago. No reunions. No forgiveness. No brotherhood. Just two men who hate each other settling it once and for all. And Paul, you're going to watch from ringside as I dismantle your former golden boy. And then, when I'm done with Seth, you're next. The referee called for the bell and Dean and Seth just stared at each other. You could feel the tension. Years of buried resentment, hidden anger, and unresolved conflict all bubbling to the surface. And then they exploded into each other. These weren't worked wrestling punches. These were shoot punches. Real strikes thrown with real anger. Seth and Dean were beating the hell out of each other. The match was brutal. Dean hit Seth with dirty deeds 3 times but Seth kept kicking out. Seth hit Dean with multiple stomps but Dean refused to stay down. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. This was about punishment. They brawled outside the ring. Dean threw Seth into the barricade. Seth threw Dean into the steel steps. Tables were broken. Chairs were used. This was chaos. After 25 minutes of absolute warfare, Dean finally hit a new finisher, a vicious combination of his old dirty deeds but transitioned into a crossface submission. Seth was trapped. He was exhausted from the previous 2 matches. He tried to fight it but Dean had the hold locked in perfectly. And with Paul Heyman watching from ringside with conflicting emotions, Seth Rollins tapped out. Dean Ambrose won and Seth Rollins has to leave Raw. But Dean wasn't done. He kept the submission locked in even after the bell rang. Referees tried to break it up but Dean fought them off. Seth was screaming in pain. His arm might have been injured. Finally, security rushed the ring and pulled Dean off. But as they were escorting Dean up the ramp, he broke free, ran back to the ring, and hit Seth with another dirty deeds on the floor. Seth was out cold. Dean stood over Seth's unconscious body and grabbed the microphone one more time. This is just the beginning, Seth. Every time I see your face, every time I hear your name, I'm going to make your life hell. You wanted to be the top guy on Raw? Congratulations. Now you get to watch me become everything you wish you could be. Then Dean turned to Paul Heyman. And you better enjoy this victory because it's the last one you're ever going to have over me. I'll come for you, Paul. And when I do, there won't be anyone to save you. Dean's music hit and he walked up the ramp backwards, never taking his eyes off Paul Heyman. Heyman looked shaken. This wasn't part of his plan. He thought he could control Dean like he controls everyone else. But Dean just made it clear that he's nobody's puppet. This is going to end badly for Heyman, and he knows it. Now let's break down why this is the most significant return in recent WWE history. First, Dean Ambrose has been Jon Moxley in AEW for 5 years. He's been one of the top stars of their company. His return to WWE is a massive get for them and a huge blow to AEW. This isn't some released wrestler crawling back. This is a top guy choosing to return to settle unfinished business. Second, the layering of this storyline is brilliant. Dean isn't just back to be back. He has specific targets. He wants to destroy Seth Rollins for the Shield betrayal that was never truly resolved. and he wants to expose Paul Heyman for being a manipulator who ruins everyone he touches. This gives Dean purpose and makes his return feel meaningful rather than just a nostalgia pop. Third, this complicates Paul Heyman's storyline in the best way possible. Heyman thought he was building an unstoppable coalition. He thought he could use Dean to eliminate Seth. But Dean just announced that Heyman is on his hit list too. Now Heyman has to worry about when Dean is going to turn on him. This adds tension and unpredictability to every segment. Fourth, this creates dream matches we never thought we'd see. Dean vs. Seth in a real grudge match with no reunion coming. Dean vs. Drew McIntyre. Dean vs. Roman Reigns if Roman gets involved. Dean vs. every member of Heyman's coalition. The booking possibilities are endless and all of them are compelling. The social media reaction has been absolutely insane. Within seconds of Dean's reveal, Twitter crashed. Instagram was flooded with Shield throwback photos. TikTok was full of people's reactions to the return. Hashtag Dean Ambrose, hashtag Jon Moxley, hashtag Shield reunion, even though it's not happening, and hashtag I'm coming for you Paul were all trending worldwide. This is the biggest wrestling story of the year. AEW fans are reportedly devastated. They just lost one of their top stars. Tony Khan has to be furious that Moxley negotiated his return to WWE without AEW knowing. Some AEW wrestlers are posting vague tweets about loyalty and respecting where you came from. But here's the truth, Dean Ambrose didn't owe AEW anything. He fulfilled his contract obligations, and when WWE came calling with an offer to finish his story, he took it. WWE locker room reaction has been wild according to backstage reports. Wrestlers who were there during Dean's original run are excited to work with him again. Younger wrestlers who only know Jon Moxley from AEW are intimidated because they know his reputation. Seth Rollins reportedly stayed in his locker room for an hour after the show ended, processing what just happened. Roman Reigns, who wasn't at the show, immediately called Seth to check on him. Dave Meltzer is reporting that Dean's WWE return has been in negotiation for 6 months. Triple H personally flew out to meet with Dean multiple times to pitch this storyline. The key was giving Dean creative control over his character and storyline. Dean wanted to make sure this wasn't just a nostalgia run. He wanted purpose and he wanted to tell a story that mattered. Triple H agreed to all his terms. Brian Alvarez is calling this the biggest free agent signing since Edge returned in 2020. He said on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dean Ambrose returning to WWE as Jon Moxley with 5 years of credibility built in AEW makes him more valuable than when he left. This isn't a broken-down veteran coming back for one last paycheck. This is a prime wrestler in his late 30s coming back to settle scores. This is massive. The contract details are interesting. According to reports, Dean signed a 2-year deal with WWE with an option for a 3rd year. He's making more money than he ever made in his first WWE run. He has creative input on his character. He can work a reduced schedule compared to full-time wrestlers. And most importantly, he has a clause that allows him to leave if the storyline isn't working. Triple H gave Dean everything to make this happen. Let's talk about what this means for Seth Rollins specifically. Seth just lost his gauntlet match, which means per the stipulation, he has to leave Raw. Where does he go? Does he move to SmackDown and rebuild there? Does he take time off to recover from the beating Dean gave him? Or does he violate the stipulation and stay on Raw to get revenge, which would make him a rule breaker? The storytelling possibilities are fascinating. The Seth and Dean dynamic is going to be must-see television. These two have real history. They came up through developmental together. They were Shield brothers. They had incredible matches against each other. But there's always been this underlying tension about the betrayal that was never fully addressed. Now it's all coming to the surface and it's going to be brutal. Paul Heyman is in the most dangerous position he's ever been in. He's built this coalition to control Raw, but he just brought in someone he can't control. Dean Ambrose is a loose cannon who just declared war on Heyman. When is Dean going to strike? Is Heyman going to try to have his coalition take Dean out preemptively? Or is Heyman going to try to manipulate Dean again, which would be insane given that Dean just said he's immune to Heyman's tricks? The other members of Heyman's coalition have to be watching this and questioning their allegiance. If Dean can just come in and declare that he's going to destroy Heyman, why should they stay loyal? Drew McIntyre might see Dean as a threat to his position. Karrion Kross might see Dean as competition for Heyman's favor. This creates internal conflict within the faction, which is perfect storytelling. Roman Reigns needs to get involved in this storyline. All 3 Shield members are now on different paths. Roman has his new fake Shield. Seth is being forced off Raw. Dean is back and wants to destroy both Paul Heyman and Seth. We need a confrontation between all 3 original Shield members. The promos alone would be legendary. The dream match everyone wants now is Dean Ambrose versus Roman Reigns for the first time in years. These two were brothers. They were the heart of the Shield. But they haven't been in a ring together since 2019. With Dean's new edge and Roman's tribal chief character, that match would be incredible. And the storyline writes itself, two Shield brothers on opposite paths colliding. The merchandising opportunities are huge. WWE is going to make millions off Dean Ambrose merchandise. New t-shirts, new action figures, new championship replicas if he wins a title. Fans who stopped watching WWE when Dean left might come back now. This return could legitimately boost WWE's ratings and merchandise sales significantly. International reaction to this return has been massive. UK fans are going crazy because Dean was always popular there. Japanese wrestling media is covering it extensively. Mexican wrestling sites are comparing it to legendary returns in lucha libre history. This isn't just a US story, this is global news. The question everyone is asking is, how long does this storyline last? Is this a 6-month program leading to a blow-off match at WrestleMania? Is this a year-long storyline that encompasses multiple feuds? Dean signed for 2 years, so WWE has time to tell this story properly. They better not rush it. Dean's first target is clearly Seth Rollins. They're going to have multiple matches. Street fights, cage matches, maybe even a Hell in a Cell. Every match is going to be personal and brutal. But after Seth is handled, Dean turns his sights on Paul Heyman. How do you have a match between Dean and Heyman when Heyman doesn't wrestle? Does Heyman hire someone to fight Dean? Does Drew McIntyre become Heyman's champion? The possibilities are endless. The legacy implications of this return are huge. If Dean comes back and has a successful run, it validates his decision to leave WWE in 2019. It proves he made the right choice going to AEW, becoming a bigger star, and returning on his terms. This isn't WWE rescuing a failed wrestler. This is a top star choosing to come back to finish his story. Critics might say Dean is a traitor to AEW, but that's nonsense. Dean gave AEW 5 years of his career. He was one of their foundational stars. He helped build that company. But he had unfinished business in WWE, and when the right deal came along, he took it. That's not betrayal, that's business. The comparison to CM Punk's return is inevitable. Both men left WWE feeling burned. Both went elsewhere and became huge stars. Both returned years later as even bigger deals. But there's a key difference: Punk came back for himself. Dean came back for revenge. Dean has targets and a mission. That makes his return feel more purposeful. What happens to Dean's AEW legacy? He was AEW World Champion multiple times. He had incredible matches there. He built that company alongside Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Does AEW just erase him from their history? Do they continue to acknowledge his accomplishments? This is unprecedented territory. The faction warfare possibilities are insane. Will Dean recruit his own team to fight Paul Heyman's coalition? Could we see Dean, Seth, if they eventually reconcile, and Roman form one last Shield reunion to take down Heyman? Or does Dean work alone, picking off Heyman's men one by one? Each option is compelling. So here's what I need from you. Comment below and tell me if you think Dean was right to come back with revenge in mind, or if he should have returned as a babyface. Are you Team Dean or Team Seth in this feud? Do you think Dean can actually take down Paul Heyman? Share this video with every wrestling fan you know, because this is the biggest story of 2025. Hit that like button if you're excited about Dean Ambrose's return. Subscribe to WrestlingNewsCC for daily coverage of this storyline as it develops. Turn on notifications because you know this situation is going to evolve rapidly and you don't want to miss any updates. Dean Ambrose is back. Seth Rollins has been destroyed and exiled from Raw. Paul Heyman is living on borrowed time before Dean comes for him. And WWE just became must-see television again. The lunatic fringe has returned with a mission, and nothing is going to stop him from getting his revenge. This is WrestlingNewsCC, and I'll see you tomorrow with more analysis, backstage reports, and coverage of the chaos that Dean Ambrose has brought back to WWE. I'll come for you, Paul, and we all can't wait to see it happen.